Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you don't know me, my name is Mikkel. I am a photographer, videographer and journalist based here in Chongqing, China. A couple of years ago, I took a photo of the Chongqing evening skyline, a photo that includes the bridge that is here behind me, Hongyedong, as well as the World Financial Center in Jiefeng Bay District. And I thought to myself, well, it's been a couple of years, maybe I can try and improve on that photo, take it again from a similar location, since my gear and perhaps also my skills have certainly improved since then. So I'm out near the Chongqing Grand Theater at the moment. We have a beautiful Chongqing skyline here behind us. It is sunset time, so the sun is slowly coming down. The sun is setting over in this direction here, which means that the last rays of the sun for the day are sort of hitting this whole landscape of buildings here behind me. So that's what we're going to try and photograph. And later on, when the sun does go below the horizon line, we'll be able to get some of these more evening style shots, longer exposure with a bluish sort of night sky to them. So for now, I'm just going to enjoy the sunset coming down here, and then later I'm going to move up to the other end of the bridge over here and take the same photo that I took a couple of years ago and see if I can make it any better. So I'm at the location now, or standing on the road where I took this photo last time. You can't really see it looking behind me here. What we have up here is Raffles City. New construction work that certainly wasn't here by the time I took the photo. It was still well under construction. But just off to my left side here, or to my left, to the other side for you guys, we have Tiananmen Bridge, and then we have Hongye Cave sitting on the other side here. Now Hongye Cave, or Hongyedong, is probably one of the most photographed areas of the city. It's one of the most Instagrammable places. The old style architecture, the buildings that are on stilts, and especially so the way that it looks at night is really, really impressive. And it's a cool thing about a city such as Chongqing is that it can be very, very, very modern, but you can still have a lot of this old style architecture that photographs really, really well. Now, if you've seen my previous two videos, you'll know that one of the things that I like to do is to photograph places like these, either during the morning or the evening. Now there's a lot of other stuff going on right now. I can see a crane down here in the bottom of a frame that I'm definitely going to try and avoid. There's another crane over here on the right that I will also try to avoid in the frame as much as possible. What I want is essentially just this bit here. And if I zoom in on my lens and readjust this, I might not be able to avoid that crane altogether. The framing that I'm looking at is something along the lines of this. Now there are two buildings over here that I may or may not want to include, because as I move them into the frame, the bridge over here sort of starts to disappear, and I'd like to keep them both. Now one way I can fix that is to move the camera left and move further along the side, but the closer I get to the bridge over here, the more it sort of disappears into itself because you become too parallel with it. So I think something along of this is probably the best that I can do. And what I'm hoping is that when it gets darker, that the crane down here won't have any lights on it, and that way I can avoid it in the frame altogether. All right, let me try and show you what I'm doing here. So I've taken the camera handheld, so I'm sorry if this is a little shaky. So basically looking at this scene, it's a little bit wider. This one is a 50mm. The camera has a 40mm on it. I'm trying to do a long exposure. Now the reason I'm doing a long exposure is because the water down here, if you take a normal photo, you can see all the ripples, but if you do a long exposure shot, the water is becoming much more smooth because the picture is taken over time. Right now I have the camera set to 6 seconds on a 10-second self-timer to prevent shake from me touching it. So let's see, we'll let it count down and take the photo. And then 6 seconds on. I think the light is just starting to turn on, which is nice. So 6 seconds are gone. We'll see a preview of the photo here in a bit. Come on. There There we go. That's roughly what we're looking at. Now, I'll have to put the photo up on the screen because obviously you can't see exactly what it is that I'm doing. But yeah, oh my God, this is tight. 50 millimeters is way too tight for vlogging. So all the lights are slowly starting to turn on. It's getting darker and darker, and I will have to step the filming camera up a little bit to capture this. I'm going to be trying to narrate this as I go, and what you will see is more what comes out of the camera itself, more than looking at me. Because unlike Chongqing Temple and Guanyu Mao that I went to recently, there's not a lot here that I can sort of film and do fancy transitions to and from and tasty, buttery, smooth, slow motion B-roll. It's just not possible standing on the side of the road like this. So I'm not going to focus too much on that. What I will do though is I'll try and explain the process that I'm going through as I take the photos one by one. Why do I choose the settings that I chose? And what is it going to mean, and what is it I'm trying to go for when I change the settings of the camera? So one of the hardest things for me to try and figure out when I do evening, long time exposure photography like this is trying to figure out, is it worth it to sacrifice the possibility of it shaking a little bit more by doing a longer exposure? When you do a longer exposure, let's say 15, 20, or 30 seconds, you won't get to see clearly the text that is on the towers in the background because they only display solidly for a couple of minutes at most. One of the things that makes this really hard is that once the sun goes under the horizon line, you only have about 20 minutes, maybe half an hour of that bluish, really dark blue sky that looks really good in evening photography like this. So once you pass that, there really isn't much you can do to save it because the sky simply gets too dark. That's roughly where we are at right now. So there isn't really much more that I can do other than go back and then look at the photos that I've taken already. So I'm gonna sign off for now, go home and look at these photos, put them into the video. You've probably seen most of them already. Those photos that I haven't really explained, there will be text down in the bottom that sort of explain the settings that I used and why I used those specific settings. So now I'm just gonna stay here for a little bit, enjoy the view because it is really beautiful. It's finally also dropped enough in temperature that it's not miserable just being outside like this. As long as you're not moving too much, that's fine. So I'm gonna enjoy the view for a little bit, pack my stuff, go home, look at the photos, and I will see you in the next one.